So statement of purpose is the reason we're here, right? So we want to learn more about what it is and what the purpose of it is really. So the statement of purpose is a requirement that is usually part of a graduate admissions application. If it's not part of a requirement, like let's say you've looked at all the requirements and you're like, well, they don't need one. We still usually recommend that you submit one. I can tell you that from around 90% of the faculty that I've spoken to, they believe the statement of purpose is key for admissions. And the reason for that is that when committees are reviewing an application, they're looking at GRE scores, they're looking at past GPA, but that doesn't tell them anything about you as a person, right? That just tells them how you did as an undergraduate student. So I guess the purpose of this is to really kind of make your case. Why are you a good candidate for graduate school? The purposes of this is to convince that committee review that you can successfully complete a program. Now you'll hear, like I mentioned earlier when we started the session, there are different ways that this is referred to. They can all be used interchangeably. It could be, you could see narrative statement, personal statement, statement of purpose. They generally mean the same thing. And again, it's meant to introduce you as an applicant, aside from and regardless of what your GRE scores were. And so, okay, next slide. All right, so before you even look into a program and before you start writing your statement of purpose, definitely, you have to evaluate your career goals. So what kind of program are you looking for? Are you looking for a professional program? Are you looking for a research program? What is it that you want to do? Do you want to be a counselor, or do you want to research psychological or conduct psychological studies? Those are all things to take into account when deciding what kind of program you want to go into and what your statement of purpose will look like. When the committee is reading your statement of purpose, they can tell if you've done your research and your homework to learn more about the program. So if you start writing that you want to be a counselor and you want to work with juveniles on your statement, but you're applying to an experimental psychology program, it's going to be pretty obvious to the committee that you didn't read what the program was about, because let's say you're going for the experimental psych program. They're going to say, well, that's not what we do. We don't license people. We're not counselors. We do research in psychology. So very, very important and key to consider that before writing it. Same thing when it comes to relevant experience. You want to include that on your personal statement. And if you're writing for a research program, you want to include research experience, right? You want to include any, if you have any publications, it's rare at the undergraduate level, but if you're going for a PhD, you want to include that on there. If you worked in a lab, you want to include that on there. What kind of programs you're familiar with, anything related to research experience is going to be very helpful. If you're going to a professional program, you want to include practical experience. Let's say you're going for an MBA and took a break because you wanted to gather work experience, then that's going to go on there. If you're going straight from undergrad to grad, you can talk about any internships you may have done while being an undergraduate student that are going to be helpful for making you a strong graduate candidate. And then lastly, you always, going back to sorry, can you go back one? Leslie warned me about this, guys. But all right, so specific interest in possible advisors. If you're going for a research program, what are you interested in researching? Are you interested in researching a specific population? Do you have a problem that is very near and dear to your heart and you want to explore that? Or do you have a population you want to help, whether it's a social work program, or basically what kind of specific area in the field are you interested in? And while you're doing that, again, researching the program, it's going to be really easy for you to find faculty members and what their research is on. So if you find that faculty members are interested in, I don't know, let's say aggression for psychology, and my mind goes there because that's just my background. And you want to do that kind of research, you can say, I would like to work with Dr. So-and-so because I'm interested in researching aggression specifically, and then continue on. So if we want to go on to the next slide, we'll talk about some key tips about your statement of purpose. So you want to make sure that you always look at research requirements and the instructions that are provided. As I mentioned before, sometimes you won't even see a statement of purpose that's required. Other times you'll see very specific instructions. I know we have one program at least that has, okay, you're going to write 2 pages. The first experience is going to be about this. The second one's going to be about this. So if you do have that, that's great. That's guidance. So make sure you stick to that. If you don't, then that's where your opportunity to address other areas will be. So once you have that said, you want to make sure that while you're writing, you use a professional tone. Of course, you want your personality to come out, but you also want to make sure that you respect the formality of the situation and the institution. So make sure that you are professional, and generally faculty prefer active over passive voices. This is not from a personal statement experience, but just in defending my master's thesis, I used to always write and speak saying, this may lead to that. This may do this. And I always got a lot of feedback saying, no, we like active voices. And so what you can do is, instead of, if selected as part of your program, I would like to, can always be changed to, if selected as part of your program, my research will focus on, and then you can move on from there. You also want to make sure that if you do talk about your character and personality traits on there, or just positive attributes, you want to back that up. You want to give examples of why you're a persistent person, why you're motivated. And that can range anything from you talking about having a low midterm grade and being discouraged, but then kind of coming back and saying, I'm going to try harder, and persisting through that semester, to more serious life circumstances that maybe even stopped you from continuing in school. Maybe you took a break, things like that. You want to include that on there, because that not only addresses possibly low grades, but also it tells the committee why there's a break in your academic transcript. Okay, and then vulnerability and sincerity. I know that it's hard sometimes to be vulnerable because you're supposed to be presented in a positive light to this committee, but know that they appreciate that. They want to know, again, those red flags. That's what the faculty kept calling them when they were looking at transcripts. You want to make sure that you talk about those, because that won't leave them wondering, why is there a C in this class that's really important and key for this field? So instead of leaving them wondering, you want to make sure that you address it. All right, next slide. All right, you want to make sure that you stay focused. So I know that I keep talking about include all these experiences in there, but be strategic as to what experiences you include on there. This is not meant to be an autobiography, right? So you don't want to throw everything in there and end up looking like you're not being focused on what the purpose of this is. So make sure that you include key pieces of information that are relevant, especially if you're going to be including experiences. So if there's something that's really important to you, like maybe you took a trip abroad and that sparked your interest in researching a specific culture, or maybe just gave you an idea, you can include it on there, but make sure that it's really what you want on there over other ideas that you may have to leave out, because you want to be concise, right? So again, if the program says we want 2 pages, write 2 pages. Don't go over, don't go under, stick to the 2 pages. If it doesn't, you want to do around 500 to 1,000 words, because you want to make sure that you're able to communicate everything you need to say with brevity, right? So stick to 5,000 to 100 words. There are a few of our programs that actually just want 500. They don't even call it a statement. They just call it a letter of intent. So make sure that you are concise. And this is because for those of you going into research programs, when you're writing grants and stuff, you have a very short amount of space for you to write your ideas. So it's also good practice to get used to that. Another thing you want to do is make sure that you contact the program for specific information. So not necessarily about what is required, but as you can see on our rowdy tip, it's a good idea to start contacting faculty to look for prospective advisors. Who's going to be your mentor through this graduate program if you're admitted? Not only will it help do that, but you can also learn very specifics as to what they want to see. So I can tell you all about writing a statement of purpose here, but these are general ideas. If you want to know how to write a statement of purpose for the physics program, you want to talk to a faculty member in the physics department, because they're going to have a better idea of what they want to see when they're reviewing those applicants. Another thing to keep in mind that I didn't add on here is that they're reading a lot of statements. So make sure that when you're proofreading your statement, that you step into the reviewer's shoes and think, would I want to read this? Would I spend the time to read this? Especially when you have 30, 50 other applications sitting there with similar statements of purpose. Aside from proofreading, it's a good idea to ask for feedback, especially from faculty members that you're close with. So if you have a mentor already at the undergraduate level, that's a good person to ask for feedback. But another great person is going to be your recommenders. So not only will they get to see and give you feedback, but that also gives them material to write you stronger letters of recommendation because they're able to see your experiences in writing from your own words. Next slide. All right, lastly, I'm gonna go over just a sample of what a personal statement could look like. It doesn't have to follow this order. You don't have to address these specific things, but it's just a general idea on how to outline, if you will, your statement of purpose. So you wanna make sure that you, of course, introduce yourself, talk about your motivations, maybe what sparked your interest in the field. If you don't want to include this part on your introduction, then make sure that it kind of flows well with the rest of your sections. And then you also want to include your personal and scholarly activities, right? So your experience, what have you done? If you're going for a research program, what kind of research have you conducted? Describe your thesis project or any other research project you've worked with other faculty or even other students. Were you part of any organizations that are going to contribute to your preparedness as a graduate student? If you don't want to go for a statement of, if you're not going for an experiment program, then you really want to focus on projects you worked on or have started that are going to contribute to that practical experience, right? So maybe you took a break and you have been working. What kind of responsibilities did you have at your job that have prepared you to become a successful graduate student or that even sparked your interest in this specific field? So aside from including experience, you want to talk about your achievements. So not only did I have this experience, but these were the outcomes of it. I conducted research and it was published. I conducted research and I presented it at a conference. It doesn't have to be that big. You can say I conducted research and it sparked this idea for a bigger project. When it comes to professional programs, you can always say, this project I started at work, or this project I started in my internship increased productivity, saved us money. What kind of impact did that initiative that you either started or participated in have in wherever you were doing your internship? Definitely key is addressing your academic interests and goals. So what is it that you want to do? Again, the committee will know if you did your research, so please go ahead and look at the program carefully so you know what kind of program you're writing this personal statement for. So you want to address those, and if you can, make sure that you mention faculty that you would like to work with or that you would like to be mentored by. Other things that you want to include on there that will show that you have persistence and can overcome adversity are any experiences that may have maybe impacted your ability to continue as an undergraduate level or just impacted you as an undergraduate student. So anything from economic hardships, health, illness, any educational disadvantages you faced, if you were a first-generation student, all of that will show the committee that you have what it takes to overcome adversity, not only in life, but also in the graduate program, because you will face some drawbacks at the graduate level. And then finally, you want to make sure that you end with an enthusiastic tone and conveying your readiness and excitement to become a graduate student. All right, that's all I have for you guys today. If you have any other questions about writing your statement of purpose, you can email us at graduateadmissions@utsa.edu. That'll link you to me. Or if you want to connect with somebody in the department to learn more specifics about, let's say, writing a statement of purpose for the public administration program, you can also email that address and we'll get you connected with the advisor for that program.